The entire history of Japan in 9 minutes. Guess which country has an intriguing combination of technological mastery, cultural richness, economic power, and geographical paradoxes? Well, that's Japan for you. From 1968 through 2010, Japan maintained its position as the world's second largest economy. With a population of 32.5 million, Tokyo, the capital of Japan, is home to the most significant metropolitan region globally. Japan has 127.3 million inhabitants, which makes it the 10th most populous country. Want to look into its history? Don't worry, it'll be fun! When did people first begin to inhabit the Japanese archipelago? There has long thought to have been no Paleolithic habitation in Japan, but hundreds of sites have been discovered since World War II, producing a diverse range of Paleolithic implements. These include core tools, which are created by chipping away at a stone surface, and flake tools, created by utilizing a stone flake that has been broken off a larger piece of stone. There needs to be more evidence that the individuals who employed these tools immigrated to Japan from Asia. At one time, immigration from the Korean peninsula was made feasible by the current Korea and Tsushima Straits. In contrast, immigration from northeastern Asia was made possible by the current Saya and Tsugaru Straits. Various estimates place the Paleolithic period in Japan between 30,000 and 10,000 years ago. In contrast, there has been some support for a lower Paleolithic society that predates 35,000 BCE. Although little is known about the community of the time, it's likely that humans utilized fire, lived by hunting and gathering, and constructed their homes in caves or pit-like structures. No artifacts made of bone or horn in Japan are similar to those connected to this period in other parts of the world. The period is known as the pre-ceramic age, since pottery needed to be understood. The emergence of a Mesolithic period is evident when the full fauna of former eras got depleted by the growing human population. Climatic changes partly explain this. The development of bow and arrow is viewed as a regional response to a decline in the amount of wildlife that could be used for sustenance. In Japan, you can make a lot of rice very, very rapidly. As a result, if you own a farm, you also own a lot of food, which is essential for survival. Thus, you are now king. Up to this point, rice farming and rice kingdoms were widespread throughout the country. The domains that produced the most rice were the most significant. However, what was the most crucial? Religion it is. The new prince encouraged everyone to practice the then-trending new Buddhist religion. Thus, religion and all of its regulations were established. After that, a new monarch took control of the government and implemented several changes, including expanding its powers and emulating China's government, which had extensive capabilities. They also stole the Chinese alphabet and wrote a book about themselves. They later produced a large amount of poetry and artwork for a second book. When the emperor died, they ceased moving the capital and kept it in situ for a while. Then they subdued the north and took care of that at last. A wealthy hipster named Kukai becomes sick of modern Buddhism, travels to China to learn a superior, more spiritual form, returns to reinvent the alphabet, and makes art and literature fantastic for a very long time. And the royal palace was transformed into such a fantastical artistic realm that no one gave a damn about governing the nation. So, how are you meant to keep your junk safe from criminals if you reside outside the palace? Employ a samurai. Everyone began to employ samurai. Influential, wealthy individuals used samurai. Poor people did not hire samurai because they couldn't afford it. More organized and potent than government, the samurai rose to prominence. They established their military government as a result. Despite having actual power over the nation, they allowed the emperor to continue in his position. All right, now let's move on to the different cultures of Japan. But before that, we need samurais to look after us. It's you guys who consume our content, so please follow the page and hit the bell icon to get updated when we post next. Moving on to the cultures. The Jomon and Yayoi are two more thoroughly documented cultures. The former gets its name from a sort of pottery that American biologist Edward S. Morse first discovered in the 19th century. He themed the pottery Jomon, chord markings to describe the patterns that were pressed into the clay. According to a compelling argument, Jomon pottery was used from around 10,500 to the 3rd century BCE. The first two are prominent aspects of the Jomon period, but the remaining three only appeared in the subsequent Yayoi period. These features are common to Neolithic cultures worldwide and include the progression from chipped tools to polished tools, the creation of pottery, the beginnings of agriculture and pasture, the development of weaving, the erection of monuments using massive stones. About 10,500 BCE, during the incipient Jomon period, pottery, for instance, first appeared in the southernmost of the 4 main Japanese islands, northern Kyushu. Despite the possibility of continental impact, the fact that Kyushu pottery predates any Chinese discoveries strongly shows that local forces were responsible for the development of pottery. Consequently, Jomon is better characterized as a Mesolithic society, whereas Yayoi is entirely Neolithic. Sites of Jomon habitation have been discovered around the nation. They may be divided into 2 categories. The first is pit-type housing, which was constructed by putting a circular or oval floor of clay or stones on the ground and covering it with a roof. The second was the roofed dwelling. Such homes' remains have been discovered in clusters, ranging in size from 5 or 6 to several dozen, which appears to reflect the population density of the period. Most of these towns had a horseshoe shape, with a central area utilized for social activities. Moving on to the Yayoi period. While the Jomon culture was still developing elsewhere, the new Yayoi culture that emerged in Kyushu slowly moved east, obliterating the Jomon culture as it went until it reached the northern districts of Honshu, the largest island of Japan. The term Yayoi comes from the name of the Tokyo neighborhood where, in 1884, the discovery of this sort of pottery initially caught the notice of academics. Yayoi pottery was rotated while being fired at greater temperatures than Jomon pottery. The most significant aspect of the Yayoi civilization was rice cultivation, likely brought from the Yangtze River Delta region in southern China. This indicates that rice cultivation was practiced in Japan from the beginning of civilization. In several areas, remnants of paddy fields with wooden piles dividing them have been discovered near settlement sites, along with irrigation systems with dams and underdrains, demonstrating the highly developed methods used to create and manage paddy fields. To make it easier to irrigate the paddies, towns at this time were often built on low-lying alluvial soil, though at one point they were also constructed on hills or high ground. There were the same housing types as in the Jomon period, the kind built in a pit and the type built on the surface. But raised floor constructions also started to develop and were used to store grain away from rats. Compared to the Jomon era, clothing advanced significantly with the development of textile science. Vegetable fibers were used to make the textile, which was woven on simple looms. Well, this was a quick recap of Japanese history, how it started, what happened, what went wrong, and their culture. Hope it was fun learning all about the Asian nation Japan.